This installment of our read-through of Circle of Hands by Adept Press will be starting a look at Chapter 3, Forging Steel. Unlike the previous clips in the series, I'll not be looking at the entire chapter in this clip, primarily due to length, but also to make it easier to discuss the material within, which is divided into character creation and venture creation. I think it makes good sense to have them both in the same chapter. I don't think it makes good sense to talk about them in a very long clip and then try and find whatever offhanded comment I made to discuss. All right. The chapter itself runs from page 43 to 69. It's fairly lengthy. Character creation runs from page 44 to 53. I went through the character creation process. I recorded it as I did it. It was the first time that I had read through the complete character creation series of steps, and we'll just leave that as it is and we'll put it at the end. I'm going to open up with talking about the characters that I made. You can see how I made them afterward. On the Adept Press website, a character generator and this character sheet are available for download, although the author makes a not too subtle suggestion that just using paper is the way to go, like we used to do when we were kids. And I can't say I totally disagree. I did mine on yellow legal paper. As you can see, there's a front and a back, one part for things which change and one part for things which basically don't. To improve the context, let's take a look at the map. This is the map that I failed to show you several times before. This is the region known as the Crescent Land, and you can see why. Now, well, I'll use the word divided, but of course these aren't national demarcation lines. These are more geographical separation producing subcultures. So the four regions in the game, Famberga, Rolke, Temarian, and Spur, are located here. This is ostensibly Rolke. You'll note there are no official divisions or lines marked on the map, just geographical ones. And so Rolke is a mountainous region on the coast. So I've put it into kind of a vague box like this. And it is from here that the circle, the organization that the characters belong to, arises. The characters don't have to come from here. The 2.5-page rundown of things you need to know about the game in Chapter 1 form the backbone of character creation, really. As you go through the process, it's bringing callbacks to that information. Character creation is very ordered, structured, and leads you through a process partly of random creation and partly of selecting material that reinforces the existing backdrop. So you move through a process which is listed out in point form as attributes, homeland, traits, professions, social rank, gender, magic, details, name, arming, and key event. Now, as I discover, and as you'll see me discover in the clip, the order of this material has a slight variance from what is listed in the actual text as you move through from section to section, following the instructions. And it actually has an effect. Now, you'll see my solution to it in the clip, but just to prevent any accidental confusion that I might cause, attributes, homeland, and traits in the bullet points come out in that order, but in the instructions, homeland and traits are reversed. So it would be attributes, traits, homeland, and it's that order, the order in the text, with which I would agree, as traits modify attributes, and your attributes, specifically the highest attributes, will contribute to where your character is from. So if you choose where your character is from and then you modify those traits according to the way it works in the bullet points, an awful lot of characters are going to come from the same place. This may have been a later intention. However, I think the variance might make it more interesting. The author can weigh in with their input if they'd like. So as we've mentioned, as you go through the process, you create two characters. Now, I'm used to doing this. I like doing troop style play. I like having multiple characters presented. Doing them sequentially rather than together is an interesting take on it. The way I experienced this, I see that there's a strength and a weakness to doing it this way. The strength is, of course, the character you don't like. If you're in the situation where you're producing a character that you wind up not liking as it's generated, then you have to start again. Well, in this process, you don't. Just do them both at the same time and end up playing the one you like better. This is a definite strength. The weakness is tied to that. I find that inspiration strikes in unpredictable ways, and I'm not sure that both characters that you create together, especially if you're doing it as a group, will receive the full benefit of your attention. But then again, you don't have to play that second character. You just have to make it interesting enough for someone to take on later. So, your mileage may vary on that. So, my two characters, I'll be describing them out of order because now I'm describing them as people based on how this character creation process caused sparks of inspiration. The first character is one I have named Kai Ernst. He's a member of the gentry, meaning that he grew up, let's say, maybe safer than others. He grew up in a martial tradition. His areas of expertise, his profession, are the high form of martial knowledge. He's a skilled warrior, and as a wizard, he has the ability to use all of the settings magic as any other wizard character will. All player characters will have access to magic. Characters with the wizard profession have access to all the printed magic in the game. Now they are using a philosophical take on magic in that they embrace both the white magic and the black magic, and they consider themselves to be gray, as you might guess. So they are perhaps interested in maintaining a balance. So kind of like that. Also, I'm picturing maybe a division within the family of past members of a fanatical white sect and past followers of fanatical black sect, and this character wanting to put paid to all of the disaster and destruction that arises from that. The circle does represent a force of social change, and maybe one of the things that lured this character into that kind of arrangement is precisely something like this. Without other characters, I want to leave that part vague. Okay. Characters are defined by brawn, quickness, wits, and charm for their attributes. This character has a brawn of 6, a quickness of 7, a wits of 8, and a charm of 5. Well, what does that really mean? It's hard to say just yet. You're generating the traits on D6s. And the D6 roll is +1. So you're looking at a 2 to 7 range. So this character is not doing too badly. The 7 cap is just for what you roll. It'll be modified after that. So traits will actually be higher once you go through character creation process, which is why I don't feel that it has a lot of meaning to me just yet. More important to me than what the attributes represent are the homeland. So this character is from Rolke. This Rolke is the area where, the region where these social changes are taking place. The king in Rolke and the circle that protects and enforces the vision of the king. You're asked to pick traits, 2 traits to help define the character. I chose cunning and ambitious for this character. These traits add to wits and quickness, which explains how his wits have risen to such a high level from the original roll of 5. So now we're starting to have the building blocks circulating around in our mind. This is where the character's from, and this is the character's physique and mental outlook. All of the attributes are both physical and mental. So starting to get this idea from the gentry, right? Distinct social rank, right? He's ambitious, but there's no more up for him to go. Circle knights cannot change their social rank. So this is an ongoing frustration for this character. What will satisfy his ambition? This became the burning question that helped me to identify who Kai Ernst really is. And then as we go through the details, discovered that this is a character who likes to have, let's say, a colorful accent to their clothing. So you'd see them in their simple traveling clothes and armor with their simple weapons, but there'd be this bright splash of color, it suggests. So what would that be? And I've decided to go with, I wanted to go with a scarf at first, but I can't see a well-trained warrior doing the whole scarf thing. And so what am I going to do? What am I going to do? So I ended up with the idea of this really bright jerkin underneath the the traveling clothes. So you would see it up around the neck. And I thought, well, what would that color be? Is it just a bright color? And then I started to go with the idea of red. I wanted this color to be red and bloody because the basic character trait as defined through the process is fierce. It's not belligerent, but this is a character who, isn't going to back down easily. So I like this flash. So capable in magic, capable in the arts of war, from the highest social ranking. I don't know that I would like this character very much were I to meet them. And so the opportunity to play them and see them interact with what's described in the rundown as human horror. Might making right pretty much everywhere you go. Fanatical wizards on both sides of their magical spectrum. Useless religious leaders maintaining, passive resistance, getting stoned in the middle. I can see this character building up to such a high point of frustration that something has to be done. That's where that fierceness comes from. That's where the willingness to put themselves right into it, into the mud, into the blood, sword in hand, and saying, I oppose this. This is Kai Ernst. This is a character I'm quite interested in playing. Now, at the same time, exactly the same time, I created a different character. This person's name is Anselm. This person is a freeman, a lower social status. And the divisions are very important. And Anselm personally makes a distinction between these social statuses. This is a person who has a very formal outlook, right? Who has respect for others. And maybe this is my hook into why Anselm is a member of the circle. Doesn't grow up in a magical tradition, is taught some magic, some limited magic, by virtue of being in the circle. And they must choose a balance of white and black to balance out. So I have one white spell for him and one black spell for him. The traits to define him were brave and romantic. And this isn't so much the love, but it is the willingness, as described in the book, the willingness to embrace your own inner narrative, maybe to hear your own soundtrack as you go through life, not necessarily defined by reality. An idealistic look at things, maybe. So the trait of being brave added 2 to his quickness, and the traits of romantic, added 2 to his charm. So this gives him a brawn of 6, a quickness of 8, wits of 2, which is why he only has 2 spells, and a charm of 6. Now, he's studied just one profession. He's a professional soldier, not like Kai Ernst, trained in the arts of war, but rather trained in the arts of trudging places and killing people and hoping you get to come home. Kind of like this distinction between the two. I'm not sure which of them I might prefer to play, and I guess eventually I'll get to see. The last thing spawned by character creation is not only his sense of formality, right? His respect for the divisions between social ranks of people. It's also the sense that he likes to wear an emblem. He likes to identify his social rank. And I was thinking, what would this emblem be? And it suggests, patches or something along those lines. And I think him wearing very proudly, the mark of his military unit, as well as the mark of the circle. These things would be central. Right? They always be clean, always be well maintained, and in a very visible spot, so that there's no confusion about who he is, where he came from, and what respect he might be due and what respect he might owe. And this became the real core of who Anselm is for me. I think he would look out at the world and through his maybe rose-colored glasses see the way things are supposed to be, the way things were intended to be, without probably any realistic basis, and working with others to bring that vision to life. I found character creation to be very fast. It was in order. Everything was in a set sequence as you go through the book. I used just a small legal pad. I drew a line down the middle, and I did my notes on either side. It was pretty easy, and it filled just one page of that. So you're not into a lot of time, even the first time through, and it will get progressively faster, especially if you make some cheat sheet photocopy. There's one area where this is not true, and that's magic. Now, magic is not explained or provided for you in the character creation section. There is a small section of notes provided by playtesters suggesting packages for characters who are not wizards, who don't get the full complement of spells. But either way, at some point, everything else has been self-explanatory. You will have to go into the magic chapter. Of course, to play the game, you're going to have to go there anyhow. But that is the only page flip that you may experience in character creation. So, not bad, actually. It's a very well-defined character creation process. It's not quite the two-page spread we got from the old Chaosium games, where everything was right there, and if you'd read the book, you could just use that page, but it's not bad. It's linear. As you go through from page 44 to 53, the characters are completed, and you're done. The one-page flip, going to the back of the book and looking at spells to decide which ones you'll pick. Okay, so now we'll go to character creation, which I filmed a couple of days ago. I just sat down, opened the book, and went through with some dice. You may find it a little hard to read the numbers on the dice, as I don't ink them. And you are supposed to use a black die, a white die, and a red die. I couldn't for the life of me find a red die, so I just went with some other dice. The next chapter of Circle of Hands is about creating characters, so that's exactly what we're going to do. Each member of the group, including the Game Master, will generate 2 characters. This will represent a pool of characters from which to draw. While you are playing a venture, the character you are controlling is yours. Outside of that, it returns to a pool, and anyone can choose to play it. It's interesting. Character generation runs from page 44 to 53, and then moves into a final stage where the group basically finalizes or approves those characters. Attributes are generated using D6. The text asks for 1 black, 1 white, and 1 red D6, and while I own a crazy amount of dice, I seem to have been very particular about the colors. I couldn't find those specific colors, and I'm not sure I would have just because the book asked me to anyway. I understand the link of symbolism to the backdrop of the game. However, these are the dice I'm going to use, in order. From left to right, black, white, and the blue there will stand in for red. There are 4 attributes to be generated. Each one is generated from one of the D6s. However, one of those traits is given a default role, so you don't bother rolling for it. At the opening stage, we're looking to generate attributes. Those attributes are brawn, which receives the default, quickness, wits, charm. The black die is assigned to quickness. The white die is assigned to wits, and the red, in this case blue, die will be assigned to charm. All results receive a bonus of 1. Brawn is given an automatic 5, meaning all starting values for brawn are 6. 5 plus 1 is 6. This can be adjusted in a later step. Everything else, you roll your 1d6 and add 1 to that total. So, let's do that. Here's what we've got. Zooming in for the players at home, we ended up with 5, 4, and 4 for totals of 6, 5, and 5. So this is how our character begins. Our first character. It's to be noted that each of these attributes is perceived as being both a physical and a mental quality. The second character generates a 5, a 1, and a 3 for a 6, 2, and 4 spread. We'll be moving through this sequence. First attributes, then homeland, then traits, professions, rank, gender, magic, details, name, arming, and the key event. Perhaps to keep things quick, homeland is determined by the largest attribute value. So, we have roll K, because the highest traits are shared between two attributes. Otherwise, it would be chosen by the highest attribute. As a side note, the bullet point of order does not agree with the presentation in the text. In order, we go attributes, homeland, traits, but as it's actually described, we have attributes and traits followed by homeland. It can make a difference. How? Traits add values to your attributes, and you choose 2 of them. They are brave, cunning, romantic, ambitious, and brutal. And what these do is provide understanding of the character's instinctual response, let's say. The way that they are, and when they're not allowed to be that way, it may provoke complaints or dissatisfaction, discomfort, that sort of thing. Mostly for the sake of demonstration, I've chosen cunning and ambitious for the first character and brave and romantic for the second. How does this influence the attributes? The trait of cunning adds 2 to wits. The trait of ambitious adds 1 to wits and 1 to quickness, raising quickness to 7 and raising wits to 8. For the second character, brave adds 2 to quickness and romantic adds 2 to charm, raising these to 8 and 6 respectively. Now, it's more than just a mechanical thing. These traits each come with a description, a hard-line description of what, let's say, seems natural or indicative of the character's personality. It's how they are known to react, it's the way they are perceived, it's the way they perceive the world. Varying from this will have effects in play. The next step involves choosing a profession and rank, mainly from a list. You can have 1 profession per every 4 wits, or a fraction thereof, or less. Each profession lists some applications. This makes it easy to understand what it's getting at. Rank is ultimately set by your choice of professions. As a later note on character will reveal, Circle Knights, the type of characters that we are creating, cannot change their rank, their social status, their social rank.
And so, this choice I've made of ambitious means that the character will ultimately be frustrated with their social mobility. So I should choose profession carefully to create the kind of tension that I want. The number I can choose is based on wit. So for the first character, I can have up to 2 professions. For the second, only 1. So for the character column on the left, I've chosen Martial, high, and Wizard. Wizard cannot be your only profession, so I've chosen Martial, low, for the character on the right. Now, there are distinct differences between Martial high and Martial low, and you cannot train in both of them, so I thought that would be interesting and might begin the diversification process between these nascent characters. One thing I wanted to point out, doing the attributes influence on homeland prior to choosing traits, I think will likely result in less diversity than afterward. So I'm going to stick with both of these characters coming from Rolke, but the answer would be quite different now. Characters with the highest score being wits come from Spur, and characters where quickness is highest come from Famberge. So now, at this stage, based on occupation and that sort of thing, the character on the left will be a member of the gentry, where the character on the right will be a freeman. Rank is an important aspect of playing the character. It's something that can be assessed by other characters, and it cannot be faked unless you have very specific skills so to do. The next step is gender, and basically your gender is whatever you want it to be. Now, this aspect, gender, does need to be discussed. In terms of your characters, gender doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because the circle already trusts you. You have distinguished yourself. The societies in which you live, or the broad society in which you live, they do care. They do discriminate. However, your group, the circle, they are a force for social change. They may not be explicitly aware of it. It may not be on their agenda, but their very existence is causing it. The next step is magic, and again, the Circle Knights, and I suppose I should at some point remember to say that the use of the word knight does not imply, or is not intended to imply, a connection to our modern conception of knights. There's a very clear statement of all the things that a knight is not, which I guess I should address, and that is, forget nearly everything you know about the word knight. There are no squires, no chivalry, no flowery language, no feudalism, no kingdoms, no castles, no code of honor, no plate armor, no heraldry on shields or anywhere else, no jousting, no war horses, no crusades, and no Catholicism. You might then ask, legitimately, why use the word knight? Well, he did. We're stuck with it. I like the word knight, and certainly its martial flavor is easily transmitted. Now, again, Circle Knights don't necessarily need to be martial, although they will be called upon to stand up for themselves, let's say. Now, magic. Wizards, as a profession, have access to all the magic in the game, which, according to this paragraph, amounts to 84 spells. Non-wizards, as Circle Knights, will be trained in a number of spells according to their mental capacity, as determined by wits. So, basically, every player character has access to magic. As we go through character generation, there are small italicized paragraphs which show the thought process of the author making a character. These are now, I guess, standard practice in most RPGs. They're very, very short and very, very helpful. Combined with that, in this section, there is a citation from one of the playtesters who suggested a starting list of spells for new wizards just to make things easy, and there it is right there, which I think is cool. The character on the left here will be a wizard, and so knows all spells, and I'll have to deal with that in a moment. The character on the right will be taught a handful of spells, namely 2, based on their wits. So with a wits of 2, this generates 2 points of spells, and spells are rated anywhere from 1 to 3 points and are either black magic or white magic, and you need to have both. So I'm looking for 2 1-point spells, 1 black, 1 white. So this is the first time in character generation we've had to flip pages. We have to flip into the magic section, and I've jumped specifically to page 121 where the spell list begins, and there's black and white magic listed out in order of point cost. So based on instant spells, prolonged spells, and creation spells, or there's also the option of rituals, I have a lot of choices. Now, do I spend the time to read these spells here, or do I go with the cool title? Well, that's up to each person, I guess. Obviously, if you're planning to play tonight or in the next day or so, it's obvious what you need to do. I'm going to go with instant magic. I'm going to choose healing from white, and I'm going to choose confuse from black. The next section is details and allows us to roll dice again. There are 3 details. They are demeanor, feature, and name. We roll the black, white, and red die to reflect this. So let's do that. What we're going to end up with is a table. The results we get are 6 on black, 2 on white, and 4 on our blue die standing in as red. So the black die is connected to demeanor. We will add, according to the instructions, its result to our charm score. And then it tells us how to interpret that. So this gives the left side character a charm of 11, which gives them a demeanor of fierce, not hostile or angry, but clearly ready for action. So I think this suits our martial wizard from the gentry interestingly well. Next, for feature, we add charm and the score from the white die, which was 2, giving us a rating of 7, which gives us the random trait of liking to use color highlights, such as one piece of bright clothing. For name, we just use the value from the red die, which in our case was 4, which gives us a 1-syllable name. The name section includes notes for pronunciation and how the different ranks use names and are referred to or refer to themselves. The game provides a long list of names and an easy way to access them according to meanings or social rank. Now, I have rolled 1-syllable names. As gentry, I need to use a surname also. So I'm going to stick with this and go with a personal name and a surname, both having a single syllable. So I'm going to choose the name from this list, Kai Ernst. A design note in this section suggests, of course, that players can generate their own names, and this is provided just to help people get over the problem of naming. If the intent is to generate 2 characters at the same time in a group context, I think having this list is a very helpful and intelligent thing to have done. For the second character, we have a 4, and a 3. Based on those results, this gives us a demeanor of formal, not, kowtowing, but understanding one's place in society. Wearing an emblem, I'm thinking some kind of military sigil from his training days. And the name is defined by meaning, one of the God or blessed meanings. So I've chosen the name Anselm, which is listed as meaning protected by God. The author reminds us at this point to start making notes, if we haven't already, about the appearance of the character and that sort of thing. And then we move into the arming section, where by profession and social status, we look at the kind of weapons and armor the character would have been exposed to growing up. They're going to get other training by virtue of having become a circle knight, even if they don't have a martial profession. So that's taken care of. And sensible and culturally appropriate instruction is given as we go through there. It's also noted at this point that there will be a support staff, retainers, to handle the mundane stuff like money and lanterns and things. So we don't need to get into that level of detail at this point, which pulls us down into the key event. I'm not going to go through all the details of arming in this video, just for reasons of length. So, what is the key event? The key event really breaks from what you might be used to in an RPG. Here, they suggest writing a 150-word scene. Now, the scene is the moment when joining the circle became the only possibility for the character. This is the moment when their commitment was forged. These are characters of incredible commitment to the circle. It's what enables them to be the main characters of this game. When I say scene, I mean it literally. You are describing, in a very short paragraph, let's say, an actual moment in the character's history when this became the case. The game gives advice not to embellish this in any way with some kind of motivation or summary of character. Just describe the scene. Then, the game follows up with a summary of how to do just that. Character generation finishes off with, let's say, balancing the circle. The generated knights are divided into the stronger half and the weaker half. The weaker half are given boosts of some kind, which might be a +1 to any score, or the single character with the lowest total scores gets a gift of the player's choice, as defined in Chapter 6. So, the mention all the way through the game that the members of the circle forge each other, making them more than what they were, is reflected actually in character creation. The rest of this chapter, called Forging Steel, looks at how to prepare ventures for the characters that you have created. We'll look at that in a separate clip.
Let's end this video where we came in, talking about the characters. As we just said, the game strongly recommends that you create a scene from the character's past, just 150 words. So after I created my characters, I sat down and I wrote, taking the little pieces of inspiration that had come to me. I just wrote. It took 10 minutes to write both, and this is what I got. This is the scene for Kai Ernst. "You will not," was a phrase Kai was used to hearing, and hearing it now as he stood outside the heavy door behind which his grandfather was kept was no surprise. No surprise at all. He did not turn to face the source of the voice. His shoulders bunched as he gave the insult of not turning time to sink in. At the sound of a heavy arm being lifted to strike, he stepped off line and turned, finally, to take in the endless disappointment on that face and upraised fist one more time. "You will not talk to that man about your uncle," would be the next thing his father said if he were not stopped. He raised his own fists and said contemptuously, "I will. I learned your brutish tricks of combat, now I'll learn your brother's white spell." He was just a boy, though. No match for the punishment which snuffed out his strong words and replaced them with cries one more time. For Anselm, the romantic, inspiration took me in a different direction, and this is what I wrote for him. Anselm opened the door of the house. He expected the poorly fitting wood to stick, but it came away from the frame completely. It had just been leaning there. He closed his eyes for a moment and breathed in the last of the smoke and perfume scent which clung to him from the funeral service. His brother was gone. He'd said his farewells, and now, he knew in a moment, he would be left with more dead to attend. The feud had not ended with his brother's death. More blood was needed to sate pride and greed. He stood with the door in his hand while the sun slipped across the sky and his shadow lengthened across the yard and counterpoint. "Enough," he said, and turning, took up his spear and followed its point down the muddy track toward the sea. So, if I had a group of players for this game assembled now, these would be my 2 contributions to the pool, from which I would take 1 character to play in our first venture in Circle of Hands together.
This has been a quick overview of character creation in Circle of Hands. Thank you for watching.